All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Dungan-Mott Music and Movie Podcast. I'm Devin Dunnigan, and here with me, as always, is Mr. Stephen Mott. How you doing, brother?
Great, Brother Jake, Ultimate Classic Rock and Culture, UCR. So thank you.
All righty, so we are back, and with Stephen saying all of that, we are back with another reaction to a ranking article, if that's what you want to call it. So we're going to dive back into another Ultimate Classic Rock ranking worst to best. And this time we're going to tackle the Lynyrd Skynyrd discography. So a band we're both major fans of. And pretty much this is continuing in our idea of trying to change up a little bit. This was Steven's idea, and I'm interested in looking into this list. I did not really see anything on this list except the first two here. So the two bottom worst. That's all I've seen of the list so far. I mean, as far as the list goes, I mean, it's got a little write up here by Michael Gallucci. I'm assuming is how he pronounces his name. This is from June 25th, 2016. And it just talks basically about the Skynyrd legacy of all the members and the plane crash and all. And it goes right on into the list. So are you ready to go, Stephen? And then we'll get into the ranking here.
Yes, Brother Jake, Z drummer.
All righty. So number 14 is the 2000 record, Christmas Time Again. So it says here between one of their lowest charting albums and a commercial resurgence, Skynyrd released a festive, free, and mostly joyless Christmas album made up of the usual suspects: Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, traditional songs such as Green Sleeves, and originals such as Skinner Family. And yeah, I think there's also a couple of 38 special songs. And I think even a Charlie Daniels Band song on here. I used to have a compilation around here. I may still have it somewhere. It was basically a split. It was like half of this album and then half of I guess 38 special released a Christmas album the same year. Yeah, I don't remember too much about this record other than I vaguely remember the title track. And I think there was one called Santa Claus is Messing with the Kid or something, which was like a takeoff of that blue song and all. And I remember liking it, but it's Christmas albums I never really go that much to when I want to listen to something. I do every once in a while go to the Clapton Christmas album he put out a few years back, but this one I don't really remember much about. But I remember liking it okay and kind of being impressed with it. But yeah, I kind of see why they put this at number 14. I mean, it just kind of a throwaway really. And I don't own this album, and there's actually quite a few Skynyrd albums I don't own actually. But yeah, it's I may pick this one up. I may see how much it is. It may be one of those that's out of print. I'm not sure. But Stephen, what do you think about this? And do you think it fits at this ranking?
Well, I tell you, I really don't think it should. Let's see. There's a couple of them on this list that I would just put all as last. So, um, joyless. I just don't know. I mean, the song I heard just now off of it was good, so I don't think it's that bad. I mean, personally, if anything, As You Forever is the worst, but that's just me. Just because I don't love it at all by any means. So, by any means, by no means. So, let me see here. Let's see. Automatically, What is it talking about? It's just talking about the plane crash and then the first part of the article, and then it's going on to talk about the Allman Brothers. Like what? Socio-political. That's $1 million word. Let's see. He was just as introspective. Another $1 million word. Let's see. And they guided music, blah, 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 to more conventional. What I'm trying to get at is this guy is not the type of guy that you would think would be listening to Skynyrd. So that's why these lists are not in the right order. So, bye.
All righty, and yeah, I do agree. I think I would agree with you on Edge of Forever. I would say that as far as like the general throwaway of the catalog, it would be this one. But in terms of like legitimate studio records, I would say probably Edge of Forever would be my last ranked Skynyrd album because I really have nothing much for that album. There's some good songs on it, but yeah, overall, not one of my favorites. And we'll probably get there here very soon, knowing how this list is so far. Number 13 is God and Guns. This is another one I'm not a big fan of. We reviewed this album back when Pete was on the show when we were DTM, and I never heard the album before Pete had actually picked the record to review, and I remember it just being it was just like a lot of songs didn't sound like Skynyrd. It was a lot of like commercial country rock, kind of what country sounds like during this kind of modern period. And it's there's some good songs. Like I like Still Unbroken. I like Simple Life. And I think there was one Southern Ways. That wasn't bad. Skinner Nation's not horrible, but the rest of that album, like I think there was one called it was one probably midway through the album that was okay. It was kind of like I said it sounded like White Snake. I do remember. I don't remember the title to it, but I remember it had kind of like a hair metal type title to it. And yeah, I remember even the song God and Guns, which was the one everybody goes to off the record. I was like, this is a piece of crap. Yeah, I mean, it says here only Gary Rossington from the classic lineup remains on the 13th studio record. Billy Powell had died a few months before the album's release and appeared on some of the tracks. And I believe Huey Thomason had appeared as a songwriter, but I don't think he played. I think it was the guy they've got now, Marks, whatever his last name, Matica or Madichica or whatever, however you pronounce his last name. And I think Huey Thomason wrote, and then he was doing like the Outlaws. It was one of their like a reunion album or something, and then he passed away shortly after. And I think he passed before this album ever came out. And it says it barely sounds like classic Skinner taking on this country rock swagger. And it says that's closer to Hank Jr.'s 80s output. No, not really. It's like modern country. And then it says the title track swings in the opposite direction of Ronnie Van Zant's Saturday Night Special. That's getting political, and I don't get into all of that, my beliefs and all. But either way, Stephen, what do you think about this?
So basically, Floyd. So that's all that needs to be said.
The worst Skynyrd song.
So I'm just playing. So now, honestly, I'm looking at this and I'm just going like I just don't know, because I think that honestly I would put God and Guns probably above about 3 or 4 of these coming up. I would probably put it behind 20, but I wouldn't put it in front of a lot of some of these. I said that backwards, I think, but I know what I was trying to say. And We're gonna get to some of that later because I don't want to get into the other ones later, farther up in the list. I want to save my, my thoughts. But really, I mean, I think this album is not that bad apart from Floyd. You know, it's got some really good stuff on it. It's got Gifted Hands, uh, and stuff like that. Uh, it's got one of those, like you said, southern ways. Or let me see. Let me go back and make sure that's what it's called. Oh, I kept wanting to say Southern Women, but I was like, no, that's 91. Yeah, there was a song on it. Let's see. Yeah, Simple Life is the one I'm thinking about. There is one called Southern Ways. Simple Life was pretty good. Seemed like it had a music video, and they seemed like they wanted it to go kind of commercial because you can listen to it and you can go, okay, that sounds like something that could be on the radio. That's what they were going for. I like Still Unbroken. Sounds kind of typical, but as far as the riff, everything else on it, I mean, I really do like That Ain't My America, but the other ones are, like Storm, Coming Back for More, Unwrite That Song, mediocre. So I would put it farther up in the list. And but anyway, that's about all I got. So I like it pretty good. No.
All right, and coming back for more was the song I was thinking about. That's the one I said could have been a Whitesnake song, but yeah, I don't have too much other to say. I'll probably keep this where it's at, around 12, 13 in the ranking. It's one of the lesser Skynyrd albums, and this is when you get into the Skynyrd albums being way too freaking long, where it should have been like maybe 8 tracks or so. And I know there's bonus tracks to this album, which are I think longer. But yeah, yeah, it is what it is. I'm not a big fan. And then we get into number 12, Vicious Cycle, 2003, so 30 years later. And it says here the band's first album since the death of original bassist Leon Wilkeson. It serves as a tribute to him as well as the other members that Skynyrd had lost over the years. And it says, unfortunately, the songs are among the most pandering of their career, barely going beneath the surface of the band's dark history, instead settling into a tired country rock groove that's as old as the group itself. So I, once again, kind of agree. I like That's How I Like It. I enjoy the song Mad Hatter. I think there's a song on there called Jake or something like that. I remember vaguely hearing that one. I think that one may have been a filler. I can't remember. This album's like 17 tracks long or something. But anyway, I mean, I like Pick 'Em Up, which is Johnny Van Zandt and Ricky Medlock doing a duet. I love that. That to me, I wish they would do more of. Then there's The Way, which is great. Red, White, and Blue, which I really love that song. There's a few other ones. I think there's one called Sweet Mama, which isn't that bad. Then the Give Me Back My Bullets with Kid Rock. I actually like that. It's a little bit heavier. Yeah, it's taking on this kind of new metal rap rock vibe to the song, but I do like it. And once again, this album. It's one of the lesser ones, though. They could have cut up quite a few tracks off of this album. It's way too freaking long. But it has been a long time since I've heard this album. But yeah, that's the way I feel. This was a commercial resurgence for the band because of the song Red, White, and Blue. That was an actual big hit for the band. And really good song. So, Steven, what do you think about Vicious Cycle?
No. To me, Vicious Cycle should have been 14 because it was bad. You talk about too long. Talk about just idiosyncrasies, the particulars of my particularities. I hate this record. Um, um, Unfortunately, the songs are among the most pandering of their career, barely going beneath the surface of the band's dark history. Settling into a tired country rock groove that's as old as the group itself. What the hell are you talking about, man? Just don't. Just stop. So, I mean, I just don't like it, man. I really just don't know. That's all it is to it. I mean, a vicious cycle. I mean, it has "Give Me Back My Bullets" on it, and it's just like a weird version, and it's like, okay. It has some swearing in it, so that's interesting. If you haven't heard it, just listen to it and you'll see what I mean. Um, I mean, looking at the rest of this record, I mean, I'm not. I mean, I could definitely do without it. I'm never just sitting around going, okay, let's go listen to Vicious Cycle. Like, it's never been. I mean, the song Red, White, and Blue, if it's what I'm thinking about, I think that's the one they go back to a lot live later on. But other than that, none of them really stuck. So bye.
Alrighty, so number 11, Edge of Forever. So we then kind of spoke about this one time, saying it is possibly the worst song or worst album in the discography. So probably it says here probably the most forgettable Lynyrd Skynyrd album, if not the worst. So why didn't you put that as number 14? It says Edge of Forever seems to have little purpose and less connection to the band's legacy. The dozen songs here are played well enough, even on their worst nights. Skynyrd are one of the tightest bands, especially when they steer into blues and country territory like they do here. Just don't ask us to remember any of these. I say probably half of this album's not bad. I like Working a lot. I like Preacher Man's like one of the best songs they've done of this kind of post crash era. That's a great freaking song. The title track's amazing. Full Moon Night. And I think there's one on there. It's called Tomorrow's Goodbye, which is like a Freebird sequel that's a big piece of crap. And I remember FLA's not bad. A bad song. I meant to say not good, not bad. But then there's FLA. Then there's Gone Fishing. Yeah, this album it's a piece of crap. I don't own it. I used to, but they were just basically trying to do 20 part two, and I mean it's just like I said, about half the album's decent, but I mean, and it's produced by Ron Nevison of all people. Like Ron Nevison, who did the '85 Hard album, then Bad Animals, and then Ozzy Osbourne's The Ultimate Sin, Kiss Crazy Nights, um, Vince Neil Exposed. There's so many albums that were, I mean, big deals back in the day. But yeah, this album's not one of my favorites. So, Stephen, what are your thoughts on Edge of Forever?
Yeah, I could definitely do without it. 99. Um, Forgettable. Well, I mean, I just don't know. I mean, this record is kind of all over the place to me. Like you're just sitting there like, I just don't know. I mean, why are they playing like he? I mean, he said in the thing like something that makes sense. They went to more of their old school type sound. As far as the type songs they were writing. But I mean, and I get the feeling that they might have brought in some outside songwriters, kind of like they did for God and Guns. But that's probably why it turned out the way it did. Probably from out in the middle of Las Vegas or something. So I just don't know. I just I really would put it at number 13. So it would go Vicious Cycle then this one if it was me. So back to you.
All righty, and so number 10 is 20. I disagree. I would probably put this as the second best of the second era of the band because, like we was talking about Van Halen on that last ranking and all, that's where like I split the band into two different categories, and I definitely do here. And I've heard Johnny Van Zant talk about how they intentionally tried not to repeat themselves and try to do Street Survivors Part 2 or Nothing Fancy Part 2 or something like that. But 20, it's a good album. They could have shaved a few tracks down. Like I love the version of Traveling Man. Finally, that got put on a studio record, and We Ain't Much Different. Bring It On's a good song. Home is Where the Heart Is. It's not bad. It's a ballad type track. It could have been a single, in my opinion. I don't hate it. And Mean Streets is not bad. ORR is not a bad song. How Soon We Forget's a pretty good track. But a lot of the rest of the album is there's one of them, Talk Myself Right. That's not a bad song. It's kind of a boogie song. I like that one quite a bit. But other than that, to me, you could have shaved the album down 3 or 4 tracks, and it would have been a much stronger record. And that's what I feel about a lot of the CD era. And we talked about that in the Red episode. I mean, I need to stop mentioning these episodes in other podcasts, but either way, I talked about the compact disc era and just how bands just threw everything on a disc and just to see what stuck. And a lot of it was filler, and I feel like the same thing goes here. Like the good songs are really, really strong, but then there's some filler in between. And you could have had just a strong record. And it had, and like Steven was talking about on the Edge of Forever with outside songwriters, there's outside songwriters all across the post crash era and on this album especially. So, Stephen, what do you think about 20? But before he goes on, I do want to say check out an episode on this album. We reviewed it not too long ago. So, Stephen, take 20.
20,000. I think this one would probably be number 7 on my list. Like you said, like it would be right after. It's the best of the post crash stuff for me. Um, so I mean, I wouldn't really say that I would listen to this frequently, but I would say that when I have listened to this album more than anything post crash. I can tell you that much, by a long shot. So as far as an album in its entirety, you know, I mean, it just flows really well, a lot better than some of that other stuff, and it seems more genuine. That's the way I would describe it. And I mean, it's got Traveling Man, a remake of that. That didn't really make a lot of sense to me, but other than that, I like the album. It just kind of flows together perfectly. It's just a good listen all the way through. So screw it. It's going to be number 7 for me. So screw this list. So screw this band. Bye.
All right, and I didn't even read the description. It says like the album that precedes it. 1999 says Forever. 20 is mostly indistinguishable. I probably butchered that freaking word. Indistinguishable. I cannot talk today. Country rock played with flash and volume. 2 Southern rock vets from Blackfoot and the Outlaws, of course. Ricky Medlock and Huey Thomason joined the band full time, and Johnny Van Zant gets to do it with his late brother Ronnie on Traveling Man through the magic of technology. Otherwise, it's entirely forgettable. I disagree totally. And I do own this record. I own more of the post crash stuff because you find all these albums so cheap compared to the old stuff. I guess there's a reason for that. But number 9, Last Rebel. I you got the first. How many albums is of the original? He got the 5 original albums, and then I'd probably put this number 6 in my ranking. I love this album. I think this is probably the closest of any of the post-crash lineup albums that they ever got to the pre-crash lineup. This is to me what 1991 should have been, which we're getting there here pretty soon, I think. But I really, really enjoy this album. I think this is, for me, it's nearly a classic Skynyrd album. I mean, Good Lovin's hard to find. I like that song a lot. One Thing, Can't Take That Away is a really good song. Kiss Your Freedom Goodbye. To me, the whole album's good. I enjoy that whole album from start to finish. And you've got Kurt Custer on drums. It just says here in the description, it says by the time their 7th album, Skynyrd were rotating guys in and out of the lineup with increasing frequency. And that's not really true. I mean, you had the pre-crash lineup, which swapped people in and out a pretty good bit until they got to Street Survivors, which I think if the plane crash would have never happened, that lineup probably would have been together for a long time. But you just had Kurt Custer coming in. He had played on 91. I have my thoughts on that. I think he played on that whole album, was just uncredited. And he just got the secondary drummer spot along with Artemis. I don't think Artemis played a inch on that record. But then it says, The Last Rebel's mostly a Southern rock call to arms for the 90s, a struggle for survival in a world overtaken by grunge and its alt rock offshoots. Skynyrd's weariness is very real here. You can hear it in nearly every song. Yeah, these albums didn't do much for Skynyrd at the time. But yeah, they did get a resurgence when the 2000s rolled around, and that's when everything that was old started to become popular again. I'd say probably late 90s, early 2000s, but yeah. I dig it. I love it. I think it's a great album. My number 6 of the band's discography. So, Steven, take The Last Rebel.
No. No, I'm not going to take it anywhere and do anything with it. Because, I mean, it's like, if you got 3 cats lined up, and you got one that hisses at people and scratches at people, then you give it to that one, and I'm going to feed this to that one because it's just crap, man. It's like they took a bunch of turds, laid it on the ground, threw them at the wall as hard as they could, and saw which one stuck, and then used the songs for this record. And called the man from out in the middle of Las Vegas, and then said, "Okay, come on down, man. We finna get ready to make us another rock and roll record." And and so they called him on down, and they were like,
"Oh my!"
1993. This is worse than 91 to me. The song "The Last Rebel" is good and it stuck live, but the rest of this junk, man. Seriously. But why? What I want to know is why Las Vegas? Why would they go? Why would they go to Las Vegas? So I'm starting to trail off. So Out of Hell in My Dodge. That's the only great song on this record, and Can't Take That Away is good, and Last Rebel is pretty good. But like I said, Last Rebel is the only one that stuck live, and of anyone that knows Skynyrd, they won't really know anything off this record besides the song Last Rebel. So it's just very forgettable. So I'm gonna forget it after this. So bye.
All righty. So number 8 is Last of a Dying Breed. So this is the latest Skynyrd album. I know they've been talking about doing a 15th studio album for the last several years, and I don't know how that will work with Gary Rossington's death and all earlier this year. But either way, it says here, by 2012, you pretty much knew what you were getting with a Skynyrd album. and their 14th LP is 45 minutes of nonstop Southern rock that barrels down the track with no concern for contemporary sounds or thinking. Whatever subtly the band once had is long gone by this point. Last of a Dying Breed is the musical equivalent of a one-sided Confederate flag argument. Okay. But yeah, this is kind of odd, but whatever. I don't get that statement at all. But either way, I like Last of a Dying Breed quite a bit. I think this is a major comeback, and for me, it's one of the best albums they put out to me since probably I'd say probably 20 overall. I think 20 was a great record, and then this album, it's of the records from 2003 onward or 2000 onward. This is probably the best of that era, and I mean I love the title track. Homegrown is another one that stands out. It's one I listened to not too long ago, and I remember there was some of the more ballady tracks on there that were pretty good. But yeah, I'd probably put this about it. Number 8, number 9, something like that. It's a good record, I think, and that's pretty much all I've got to say. But I mean, not too much else to add other than that. So Stephen, take Last of a Dying Breed.
I mean, I tell you what, man, I really hate this record. I mean, there's nothing sensical about the flow of this record. I mean, it just it just doesn't really have anything going for it. It's just okay, nothing comes easy. That's literally the name of a compilation I have with 3 albums on it. Why do they use the same stuff for everything? By the way, they got a song on it called Honey Hole. Maybe they're referring back to the 91 song, referring to one about a honey man. Is he even a man? So that's a quote. So we're getting to that later. So that's 91. This is not one I go back to ever. And I would never consider putting this above maybe 12. So I mean, it's just stupid, man. Like, I mean, just don't. Just stop. I mean, like, I don't have anything but, like, just disgrace for just the lack of a better term. Like, it's a disgraceful piece of limicking dog manure. So, bye.
Alrighty, so number 7. So speaking of it, Lynyrd Skynyrd 1991. So this has kind of been retroactively named just 1991, but this was supposed to be the name of the band at that time, was Lynyrd Skynyrd 1991, and that was because of a bunch of legal stuff where they really weren't supposed to call the band just Lynyrd Skynyrd. It was supposed to be Lynyrd Skynyrd and kind of a moniker added on to the end of it. I'd probably put this at maybe 9, something like that. Probably under Last of a Dying Breed, maybe above it. I don't know. It says here for Skynyrd's first album in 14 years, and the first since the fateful plane crash that forever altered the band's history. They recruited late singer Ronnie Van Zant's younger brother Johnny. I almost said Ronnie, but Johnny. While there's certainly enough Southern rock swagger to the songs, the original numbers possess little of the classic lineup's dynamics. It was a welcome return for fans waiting for a new album. But ultimately, it also is a pointless one. So that's kind of become a running joke on this podcast over the years, is that it's such a terrible album. I've listened to it many, many times over the years. I think overall, like with 20, I think this album's just too freaking long. It's 12 songs, 11 songs, and you could have shaved down 3 or 4 songs off this record. You could have gotten a really, really good 30 something minute record. And it would have sounded more along the lines of classic Skynyrd. I think I love Smokestack Lightning. I love Keeping the Faith. That's a great track, Keeping the Faith. Southern Women's really good one, Pure and Simple. And this is on this record. Backstreet Crawler, It's a Killer, End of the Road. And you've got some terrible crap on this record too, like Mama, I'm Afraid to Say Goodbye. And then what's the other piece of junk on this one? Money Man's stupid, but I can deal with it. I've seen enough. It's not great, but it's different. It's really different, but it's so. And I guess you've got that. And Good Things, terrible song, but yeah, I remember saying in one of the old reviews, like the best thing about this record is the logo, and I'm not being mean about it, but yeah, I could probably put this 8 or 9, something like that. I'd probably put Last of a Dying Breed right over the top of this one. So yeah, it's not terrible. So Stephen, what are your thoughts on number 7, 1991?
I mean, I would not put this anywhere near the top. So, I will say 91 would probably be my number 10. I like some of the songs on it, but as far as the whole entire record, there is some crap stuff on this record. And I would like to say furthermore that I just don't know. Other than stuff like, I mean, Southern Women, Pure and Simple, Smokestack Lightning is pretty good, great. There's a couple of songs on this list, or on this album, I should say, that are, in my opinion, some of the worst in the entire catalog. So I'm not going to give those away just yet, but I see one of them that I know Devin would consider to be his worst, at least an honorable mention worst. So let's just give a hint here, and it starts with the word "mama." So thank you. So I just really don't. I really don't think that this record is horrible. I just think that once you get toward the latter half of it, it just sucks. So just stick with the first half and then just stop. So bye.
All right, so number 6 here is Endangered. Wow, I almost forgot about this record. Endangered Species. So this was the unplugged Skinner. This is a great freaking album. I don't care what anybody says about, oh, it's just Skinner hopping on that trend. This is a great album from start to freaking finish. This is between this and The Last Rebel. So I would probably put Last Rebel at 6 and 20 at 7. This would probably be my 8. I think. I don't know. I may would swap 20. We're gonna have to do our ranking at some point on this and Van Halen at some point in time. But yeah, I mean, some great new songs. Devil in a Bottle's a good song. Good Luck, Bad Luck, Hillbilly Blues. All I Have Is Songs. That, I mean, the 4 new songs on this are amazing, and they do some great covers. They do a version of Poison Whiskey, Down South Jukin'. What else is on here? Am I Losing? That was a great deep cut they brought out. They do an acoustic version of The Last Rebel, which I think is probably the best version of that song overall. This was the first album with Owen Hale on drums, and then the first and only album with guitarist Mike Estes on guitar. Really, really strong record. So, I mean, it says here The best album by the reunited Skynyrd features stripped down arrangements of some of the band's earlier classics like Saturday Night Special and Sweet Home Alabama. There are some new songs here too, plus a down home casualness lacking in so many of the group's latter records, a temporary break from the noisy bluster. What? I mean, this dude, it sounds like he just hates Skynyrd altogether and just hates everything they stand for. There's been a couple of digs at some of these albums. I'm just like, you're thinking way too much into this band. It's not as what you might think, and I'm not going to go into that. But yeah, Steven, what are your thoughts on Endangered Species?
My mic was muted. Yeah, I agree. I really, I mean, honestly, I just don't know. Like, I'm gonna drop a bombshell here. I think I would put it above, probably above the first album and everything else. I think this would be number one for me. Now I'm playing. Oh, yeah, I'm just playing.
Oh,
So yeah, number 6 is definitely the right placement if I really think about it. I think it would go number 6, then 20. If it was me, I changed my mind from earlier. So I think this is a genuinely great album. Some of these takes on these songs, I love the production. Uh, I mean, it was just a great idea that they should have done a lot earlier. So I mean, I think it's just it's a near perfect album to me. I think it's just great. My favorite thing on it really is the acoustic version of Last Rebel. I think that's the way it should have been on the record, and all that drum intro, the snare intro, and all that. I think I could have done without all that. I really love that version. So I mean, that's the way it should have been recorded to me. So that's just me. But back to you.
all right. So number 5, give me back my bullet. So I agree 100%. This is probably my least favorite of the original pre-crash Skynyrd. This is the only Skynyrd record, which is the interesting thing about it. I don't think the first one had 3 guitars technically because Ed King didn't step up until the second record because he played bass on the first. I think it was this and the first album that had only 2 guitar players on it. And it says Lynyrd Skynyrd were falling into a bit of a rut by the time of their 4th album. Good news is that it ignited the band on their most adventurous LP, Street Survivors, the following year. It's more of the same expertly played Southern rock with only the swaggering title track standing out from the kind of directionless pack. What? What? Like, this just sounds like this dude does not get Skynyrd at all. Like, I don't want to go into it, but it sounds like there's something else going on here than just a legitimate separating yourself and reviewing it for what the music is here. But yeah, I would probably put this as my 5. So I do agree with the guy there. I'd put it at number 5 for me. So that's all I've got to say. I mean, some great songs. I mean, Every Mother's Son, Cry for a Bad Man, Old Gypsy Roll. The title track, of course, is a classic track. What else is on here? Searching, awesome. And I got the Same Old Blues, Double Trouble, Trust. I mean, great record from start to finish. Yeah, you may be thinking like I don't know what I'm talking about, but no, I'm coming up with the track listing off the top of my head. I've heard these albums so much over the years, but I do have to think a minute about what's actually on them. I don't write any of this down except when we do album reviews. So, yeah, Steven, what do you think about the placement? To give me back my bullets here.
I would swap it out with Nothing Fancy. I would say number 5, Nothing Fancy. Number 4, Give Me Back My Bullets. So, thank you. Oh, bye. Now I'm playing. So basically, I just personally like Give Me Back My Bullets. Um, Not that I dislike any of the ones, after it on this list, or before it, I should say, technically. But um, it's just that I just like the sound of it. A lot, even the band members are, say that it's missing the third guitarist, but I don't really think it makes that much of a difference, to tell you the truth. As far as just a record, maybe live it would a little bit, but just as far as the effect of that third guitarist, I don't really miss it for this record, because the songs, the way they're written, they're just tailor made for two guitar players. For example, like Every Mother's Son. Listen to that song. I mean, do you really need anything else from that song? To me, you don't. And for that whole record, I think it should, the way the songs are written, they're just tailor made, just perfect. And that just duo with Gary and Alan is just perfect there to me. So I mean, even the band members that say that there's something missing, to me, I love it. So it would be swapped with Nothing Fancy. So thank you. That's it. So no, swaggering title track, standing out from the directionless pack. Screw you and screw everything that you stand for. Okay. So I'm just kidding. Michael Galusi, probably Galusi, because he sounds gay. So I don't know. I'm not gonna leave that in. I'm gonna be editing that out. But I just had to say that just for my piece. So piece of shit. Bye.
All right. So number 4 is Nothing Fancy. So you were just talking about that record. I think this is the most underrated of the first 5 albums. This is the one I don't think gets enough love. This is the first Lynyrd Skynyrd album to reach the top 10. Nothing Fancy, the band's third album, continues their lifelong game of musical chairs. It's both guitarist Ed King's last album until his return in 1991. He didn't return, and they did not reunite in 1991. They got back together in '87. And then it says, and of course, drummer Artemis Pyle's first. It doesn't affect much. Ronnie Van Zant is all bluesy and righteous on Saturday Night Special, and the band is down and dirty on Whiskey Rock and Roller. Woman Like Rock and Roll. So I love this record. Railroad Song's one of my favorites. I think Am I Losing's on here. That's another one of my favorites. Whiskey Rock and Roller's a great one. I love Saturday Night Special. That's classic. I love it. It's the reason it's still in the set to this day. I love it so much. And I'm trying to think about what else is on here. Crap. On the Hunt, that's another one that's fantastic track. I love it. And said I'm coming up with this off the top of my head. I can't remember the other songs. It's sad when I remember the songs more on the post crash albums than I do the pre. But yeah, I love it. I think it's a great one. So, Steven, what about Nothing Fancy?
My mic was muting. So Nothing Fancy. I mean, I like I said, I already said my piece on this. Piece of. So this record is like a lack thereof. So on opposite day. So basically, I mean, it says Ed King's last album until later on. Artemis Pyle's first. It says it doesn't affect much. Yeah, it does. Let's see. Workman like rock and roll. Screw you, man. Like this. I mean, I really don't think this is the same guy that wrote the Van Halen article, because
I said woman like rock and roll, not workman like.
That's what it says. Workman like.
Yeah, I realize that now since you said that, but I said woman like. I don't know where the crap. I'm dyslexic, I guess. I can't read. I'm illiterate. I can't count.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Back to you.
um, so basically, I mean, I like most of the stuff on this record. Anything that Ed King was a part of to me was that much better because of him, and it just added to it. I mean, it's like a thing where when he quit, there was, Ronnie just didn't really make any effort to get him back because the band didn't need Ed King, but you know he added to the mix. You know, he wrote on every album he was on. He wrote material and he played top level lead stuff over it. And so I mean to me, Ed King was a huge part of the early discography. So people don't quite realize that, I don't think, but because a lot of the most popular stuff by Skinner is stuff that he might have played on some of it, but he didn't really come up with it. But I really like for example, on this record, Am I Losing and stuff like that. Like I know I can pretty much tell that he had a big part in the songwriting in that song, and there's a lot of them on the records that are around this area that he had a lot to do with, and I feel like a lot of people don't give that credit, you know. But I mean, that's just me. As far as a lead player, Ed King is top of the line, you know. And really, he rarely shines on Second Helping, but we're gonna get to that later. But to me, yeah, that's just what I really get from this record is Ed King. So that's what sticks out to me. So yes.
Alrighty, so number 3 is Street Survivors. So I would put this. This is my favorite Skynyrd album. Number 1 for me. I think this is the peak of Skynyrd altogether. And it says here the last album made by the band's classic lineup before the tragic plane crash that claimed the lives of singer Ronnie Van Zant and guitarist Steve Gaines. They leave out the background vocalist Cassie Gaines and Dean Kilpatrick, of course. But it says Street Survivors remains the band's most energetic and adventurous EP. Released just 3 days before the crash, the album plays around with backing singers and horn arrangements. Would Skinner have continued to move in this direction? I believe they would have personally. It says hard to say when the band regrouped with Van Zant's brother on vocals 14 years later. They were deep in blustery country rock territory. So this to me, like I said, is where the band peaked. The production on this record is perfect, very, very polished, but great. And that's the one thing I didn't talk about with Give Me Back My Bullets. Like, that's a very raw record overall. And Nothing Fancy to me was like a step up from the first 2 records in terms of the production. I felt like that was a bit more of a polished production compared to the first 2. But I love this record. I think this is a great album. We unfortunately lost the review, or I take that back. I lost the review that we did for this album. And we will eventually redo it probably. But I mean, What's Your Name, That Smell, One More Time, which is an older track, but such a great one. I Never Dreamed, I Know Little. Got that right. I mean, this whole album's just so great. I love it so much. Such a great record. And I can't really say much else. To me, the best Skinner record of all of the albums, of the 14 that we've talked about, or of the 14 that we've talked about so far, this is the greatest of all of them, and the greatest to me of all of Skinner's discography. So, Steven, take Street Survivors.
I mean, seriously, man. I mean, just stop. I mean, I'm just playing. Oh, so yeah, Street Survivors. It would probably be. It would be right at number 3 for me. I like where it's at. So bye. I'm playing. Um, yeah, 77. This was like commercial Skinner to me. So I mean, Steve Gaines. So he basically, this is his album. This is basically his solo album. And Ronnie pretty much let him take over the band. And I mean, that's it. That's basically the way I see this record. I mean, there were other band members that played on it, but this is basically Steve Gaines' solo record in a sense, and a lot of sense, and my commonalities of my common sense. So, there's a lot of horns. I saw that he said something about that in the article. Horn arrangements, like I said, commercial. That's what I take from that. Blustery country rock territory. Again, these words. Blustery? Okay. These $1 million words he's using is just getting me. Now, I'll tell you, there is one particular song off of this one that I'm going to mention in a certain list coming up that we're going to make. So it's going to be quite interesting. Quite the introstation combination combinalities. So, Street Survivors, yes, the most commercially great, the most commercial sounding album to me. And I mean, I just don't know. So, no.
Alrighty, so number 2 is Second Helping. So I would put this probably my number 3. We're pretty much on track, even though I would switch out the number 1 for the number 3 here on the list and just move these two down a couple of notches. So it says here Skynyrd's sophomore effort gave them their biggest hit, Sweet Home Alabama, and Ed King moved over to guitar full time, setting in place the band's classic triple guitar lineup. Displayed best on the album closer, Call Me the Breeze. In a way, Second Helping is the most representative Lynyrd Skynyrd LP, Southern rock with a conscience and attitude to spare. So, yeah, I would put this probably my number 3. I just knock it down one notch and knock the number 1 here, which we'll get to in just a minute, down one notch. So, I love it. I love Sweet Home Alabama, even though it's burnt out and it's played out. The band play it all the time. It's been on every live album, on every compilation that the band have ever done. It's played out to the max. I love Call Me the Breeze, even though that was played out. This is like, I'd say between this and the first record, which we're spoiling things a bit, but I'd say this and that one, put them together, and it's basically Skynyrd's greatest hits, pretty much. And I love it. I mean, you still got some great ones like the Ballad of Curtis Lowe, Don't Ask Me No Questions, which is one of the best Skynyrd songs. You have Working for MCA, Swamp Music. I mean, the album's great. You cannot deny that. But like I said, it's pretty much like a greatest hits album. It's like the first Van Halen record or Black Sabbath, Paranoid. It's all the songs you hear on the radio, but a few that aren't. But yeah, either way, Stephen, what is your take on Second Helping?
To me, this is going to be some great controversial stuff here. This is number 1, so that's just personality's favorite. So, the personables. Yeah. So, I mean, the Second Helping. I think this should have been the first helping, because, yeah, this is the best album to me. Yeah, see, basically, the first album, pronounced, it was like, I'll get into it in a minute. I'm in a minute here, but it's like a greatest hits record. But this one, it had the kind of the different songs on it that wasn't just meant to blow you away in a commercial sense, but like in another way that's just, tailor made for this band, and it's just great. You know, like swamp music. Oh yes. So Ballad of Curtis Lowe. Yes. So I just don't know. So yeah, this is number one for me. Swap out. For me, it would go Second Helping 1, then it would go Pronounced 2, then it would go Street Survivors 3. So thank you. No.
All right, so number one here is Pronounced. Speaking of that album, I just listened to this album just the other day, actually. And this is Skynyrd's debut album, includes all of the band's hallmarks, albeit in primal form at times. There's multi-guitar attacks. The end of Freebird is still a thrill. Wise reflection, Tuesday's Gone, humor, Give Me Three Steps, and the sort of down-home philosophy, how the heck you pronounce that freaking word? And I just got strangled and burped all at the same time. Philosophizing that both distance them from the. Oh my God, I cannot talk. Just edit what you can of this, but philosophizing that both distance them from and set the template for 70s Southern rock, Simple Man, more so than any of their records. Pronounced is filled with great songs, ones that would stay in their set list for years and helped build their legacy, a classic of its era and genre. I couldn't say it better myself. That's actually I see him eye to eye. I think that's not even that is the best description he's put on this list so far, this article. And I love it. It's played out, especially the first part of the record. Then when you get into kind of the kind of deep tracks like Poison Whiskey and Mississippi Kid, stuff like that, that to me is when the record really pushes itself up a lot. Like I said, with talking about Street Survivors and Nothing Fancy, like this album in Second Helping is kind of more raw than this, but this still has this raw sound to it. It's very like it says here, like primal sounding. Like yeah, it sounds like raw in your face, like if they were in like Hill House rehearsing, this is what you would get. Like this is almost like a live album just put out as a studio record almost. It's a great album. But yeah, I would put this as my number two. I'd take this a little bit over Second Helping, not much. Depending on what day it is, I'll probably switch them around. Who knows? But like I said, we ought to do a ranking one of these days. I'm not prepared enough to do it today, but yeah, one of these days we'll do like a ranking from worst to best Skynyrd records. But yeah, so Steven, take the first album, your thoughts, and well, before you do that, I do want to say one thing, and this came out a couple of years ago. Well, no, it's been several years ago now. Time flies so much. They did this album and Second Helping live, and it was actually really well done. I recommend you checking that out. I think it's on YouTube and all, and Spotify. It's out there. You can hear it very easily. And that was actually really great. They did both albums, I think, over 2 nights in I believe Jacksonville, Florida, their hometown, whatever. And it's definitely worth checking out. So, Stephen, first album.
So basically, my mic was muted. Um, so Lynyrd Skynyrd, Chattanooga Choo Choo, 1975. So this is actually the best record of all time. Not number one. So yeah. So Pronounced. I mean, like I was getting into earlier, I've listened to a lot of interviews. So basically, Ronnie was talking about that they had a lot of songs together, and so a lot of the songs that were on Second Helping were the ones that were left over. But that kind of shows you the amount of stuff they had that was really good. But really, the Pronounced was like a greatest hits record in a sense, and that's really all big bands' first albums are, because they've taken a producer sitting around going, okay, this is your best ones. We're going to use these. Now, the ones that kind of stumbled me a little bit, or stumped me, I should say, is that, okay, not that these songs are not good. They're really good. But as far as commercially the best, no. So think about it for a second. Mississippi Kid, Poison Whiskey, things going on. They're great songs. They're great. But as far as, putting them on an album, trying to get your absolute best stuff out there, it just kind of puzzles me a little bit in the way that they wanted. I could figure they probably wanted their most, the stuff that they thought would sell the most to the widest amount of people, But I could see it. I could see how these songs, most people would like them really good. But I feel like on the other hand, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like they chose some of the wrong ones for the first record. So that's just me. Bye.
All righty, so that is the ranking. Like I said, this was done by Michael Gallucci, and this was from back in 2016, so several years ago now. But I'm going to kind of just go through the ranking again. So number 14, Christmas Time Again. Number 13, God and Guns. Number 12, Vicious Cycle. Number 11, Edge of Forever. Number 10 is 20. Number 9, The Last Rebel. 8, Last of a Dying Breed. Number 7, Lynyrd Skynyrd, 1991. And number 6, Endangered Species, the top 5. Number 5, Give Me Back My Bullets. Number 4, Nothing Fancy. And number 3, Street Survivors. Number 2, Second Helping. And number 1 is pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd. So that just celebrated its 50th anniversary. So that's crazy. And this band celebrated its 50th anniversary. So that's the article overall. There's a bunch of these things for different bands going around. I think there's one for Kiss. There's, I think, one for Eric Clapton as well. Who knows what else? But hope you all enjoyed this episode. This was a cool little thing to do. This was, like I said, kind of being like the Van Halen reaction to worst to best albums. Maybe we can find like some other articles that's kind of got a different take on these. And even though I disagree with a lot of what Michael Gallucci had to say about these records, it's his opinion, his list. So, there you go. And that's pretty much all I've got to say. I like doing these things. It's interesting to get other people's reactions overall. And if you like these little videos, or these videos like this, give us feedback. Tell us. And you probably just heard my dog shaking in the background. But other than that, I really, really enjoyed doing this. This was quite interesting. Even though, like I said, I disagree with a lot of it, and there's some of it I did agree with pretty much 100%. That's it. I love these little ultimate classic rock articles like this. They're very interesting to read up on. And like I said, we'll probably try to keep on doing these kind of episodes in the future. Steven, you got anything else to add?
Skynyrd vibes. So, really, I'm at a loss for words, because there's a song called "Take Your Time," and you're gonna see, but it's gonna be interesting on my next list. So I may or not be high right now. No.
All right, so I did want to do this before I got off of here. Just kind of go through some of the Skynyrd albums that I own personally. I don't own a whole lot. I don't own the full discography, but I will go through some of these. Southern by the Grace of God, I love this one. This is a great live album. This is from the tribute tour from 87 to 88. It was recorded in 87, I believe, and a really, really good one. I really, really enjoy this one quite a bit. Then this is an interesting one. So this is 4 discs of 1991 related albums and outtakes, some demos. Then you've got a live show here. It's not a full show, but it's near about a full show. There's a few little edits in there here and there. But I think they've done another version of this show that has the full show with edits from the audience recording. This is really cool. I picked this up off of eBay several years back. I think it may be a bootleg. I don't know. Who knows? And Lynyrd Skynyrd, 1991, of course. And 20, I've talked about that. Southern Nights, which is a really cool live album from the Endangered Species tour. This was from, I believe, 94, 95, something like that. This is recorded in the USA. Came out in 1996. And this is one of the only albums where I think this is the only record where they were on SPV recordings, I believe. Then you have Nebworth, 1976. I like this one quite a bit. The mix isn't great, but it's a good live album. Then Atlantic City, this was the Decades Rock live. This has a bunch of guest appearances. I have only ever watched the DVD off of this, and I didn't care too much for it. I remember the Skynyrd tracks being good, but then you had like this whole host of guest appearances that I was just not a huge fan of. And one more for the fans, which is a tribute basically. I really, really liked that. It has Randy Houser, Robert Randolph, and Jimmy Hall, Aaron Lewis, Blackberry Smoke, OAR, Cheap Trick, Moe and John Hyatt, Government Mule, Warren Haynes, Jamie Johnson, Jason Isabel, Peter Frampton, Trace Adkins, Charlie Daniels, and Donnie Van Zant, Alabama, Greg Allman, and then Skynyrd, and then everybody comes out at the end for an encore with Sweet Home Alabama. So that's a really, really good one. I also have this compilation. I wish if we was doing this video, I could show it off better, but this is something I just wanted to kind of add to the show. So this is called Family, and this is pretty much something from all of the Skynyrd related solo projects. So you've got some of the various greatest hits of Skynyrd. You've also got some stuff from 38 Special. You've got some stuff from the Johnny Van Zant Band. You've got a Johnny Van Zant song, a song from the Van Zant, which is, I believe, the one it had Donnie Van Zant and Johnny, and Washington Collins, the Alan Collins Band. I didn't realize that there was anything off of that on here. Rossington Band. There's nothing from the Artemis Pyle Band, which I guess because of their relationship, I guess there's a reason why there's nothing on there from that band. All-time greatest hits, or it's all-time greatest hits. This is just a compilation. Really, really cool. It's the earlier stuff, and can't really say too much about it. It's just basically the regular old greatest hits. Then this is something I picked up several years back from an old time pottery. So it's of all places from there. I picked up a couple of CDs, and that place used to actually have some decent ones. I mean, you never know where you're going to find CDs until you go look. But this was a 2-disc thing. It's a budget greatest hit, so you have one side of it is the 20th Century Masters Millennium Collection CD, and then the second disc is Skynyrd Friends. So this is basically the tribute album from the mid 90s, which I've heard very mixed reactions on. I've never heard it though, but some people say it's interesting. Other people not so much. Then you have Live at Steeltown, which I love that album, great one. And then Endangered Species, and I think that is all I have of the Skynyrd discography. So nothing much from the pre-crash lineup. So that is it. That is the lineup. I am hoarse. I can barely talk at this point. My throat's hurting, but either way, that is the episode. We hope you all like this one. Give us some feedback. Tell us what you think. I know the episode views have been really, really good here recently, so we hope to keep them up and keep things going. And we hope you all just like, comment, subscribe, and some feedback, as I said. So thank you all for watching. See you next time. God bless you all. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.